Okay, the first thing to do is when you set out to read something, so you'll be reading everything from resources, the GCU library, you might have some paper resources, you might be reading stuff for your dissertation. What is your goal? If you're looking to expand your lecture notes using a textbook, this is done differently, you might take notes. If you're speed reading, then read in clusters. So when you read, you shouldn't read every word, okay? Read in clusters. So you've got the first cluster is there. They need to read many books in the course of studying. So while you're looking at the PowerPoint, have a look at that and see if you can read in clusters. So it's like for those of you who are second language learners, you should be learning words in chunks of words. So the goal is to assimilate the author's embedded ideas, then read more slowly. So if you have, say you're looking at large text, whether it be paper-based text or whether it be a web-based text, look at the text as if it were a map, starting from the bigger features and then zoning in smaller ones, but not reading anything in detail. Look at the layout, the sections, and the headings and subheadings, as well as any images. Circle any highlighted or italicized words, as well as any words you don't recognize. So try and get the overall understanding. So don't look at something without any thoughts in your head. Think about what the goal for your reading is. Are you answering a question? Depending on what the subject matter is, if it's asking a question, have that at the back of your head. Don't read every word. Read in clusters and skim through it, seeing as you can get as much detail as you can. Do they answer your questions? So your assignment will have a question. So the assignment will have an instruction word like detail, evaluate, criticize, outline, what have you. It may have, then it'll have the topic area. The topic area could be anything that you're working on, whether it be computing engineering, anything. So when you have the question in your head, you'll probably be online. So jot it down in a separate piece of paper. Write question 4. Underline or highlight keywords or ideas. Circle words that are called signal words. Signal words are things like but, however, as it helps you to see where you're going on. Examine the structure of the writing. So you've probably heard, we may not have heard, of skim, scan. So you're skimming the information for specific information. So if you're looking for a key word like an author's name or a product or a substance or a concept, you need to be looking for specific information. So you skim through the text really quickly. You scan the information for the overall gist of it. Pick out the topic sentences. So can anybody tell me whereabouts the topic sentence comes? Put it in the chat. Where does the topic sentence come? So when you're reading something, where's the topic sentence? Yep, excellent. So at the start. So the topic sentence is always the sentence that the topic will tell you the main gist of it. So that's the main idea, and then it's supported by further ideas. Identify the signpost words firstly, however, clearly. So when you're writing your assignment or you're writing a dissertation proposal or a dissertation, it's good to keep an eye on these words. So these are signaling words. So firstly, however, clearly, furthermore, moreover, in spite of, with regard. These signify a change in direction. So when you're writing your assignment and you're inputting somebody else's ideas, it'll be these words that you will be able to put in. So for example, if McDonald brackets 2015 says blah, 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 however, blah, 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 you can then put that into the sentence. So it's good. These words show that another author has had a change in idea. So when you're reading for a specific purpose, and it's these words that will be really helpful. Take cues from the punctuation. Can it write? The first one there is a colon. Colon. Can anybody tell me the function of a colon? What does a colon do? Yes, it does. Daniel knows that because I told him the other week. I think. So yes, good. So colon introduces a list. So when you're writing, I'm sure you know this, you don't say e.g. and you don't say for example, because that's informal English. And the colon, what is a colon? Semicolon, what is that? Yeah, exactly. What does a semicolon do? Ah, well, there you go, David. I learn something new every day, particularly Wednesday. So what does a semicolon do? Yep, excellent. No, Ryan, a colon, well, yes, it can divide a list, you're right. A semicolon, which is the full stop at the top, the comma underneath, is halfway between a comma and a full stop. So it's slightly longer than a pause because a comma is a pause, P-A-U-S-E. A comma is a pause. Yes, exactly, Ali. It's a longer pause, but it's not long enough for a full stop. So it's kind of like you're taking a breath. A question mark is a question mark, and a exclamation mark you shouldn't really use in your writing because it's deemed to be rude. So don't read too slowly, because if you read too slowly, yeah, angry. So that's like angry text talk. So that's why if you're writing your text in using exclamation marks, it means you're cross. So don't read too slowly, you lose concentration, and losing concentration is not good. So checkpoints, look out for the following. Now this may seem really obvious, but when we all went online last March, people didn't really have time to set up their new workspaces. So you're used to reading in the library possibly, which is full of bright lights and everything's sorted out and there's not so many distractors, and suddenly you're working in a different space. So you might be working in a tiny wee room at home, you might be sharing it with other people, you might be overseas, you might, all sorts of things. So look out for distractions. So if you're going to reading something long, keep distractions to a minimum. Sub-vocalization, keep noises to a minimum. Reading word for word, don't read word for word unless it's a tiny piece of specific text or a table. Don't read word for word, particularly if you're international students. That's a no-no, because reading individual words don't really make any sense. It's only in the bigger context. Overtiredness. So how many of you read late at night? Wait, I'll put it up in the poll because I like doing them. Hold on. Do you read late? Okay, I put it up on the screen. Do you read late? Hmm. 39 people aren't responding. 37. So it looks like most people read late. Oh God, late and during the day. Now there's a thing. Okay. I'll have to get my glasses on, can't read your name. Yeah. See, everybody has their different situations, so it's needs must. So a lot of people do read late and late and during the day. So it does seem to be that, okay, Jace, you need to read a bit later. So often you have to read in chunks, so you kind of read in chunks of the time. Not everybody has the luxury of getting up, putting their feet up and reading a book. So as long as you're kind of organized and are able to read in small bits and then have time to be able to record what you're reading. So overtiredness, everybody gets tired, and particularly reading late at night. So poor eyesight. Now, working online unfortunately has an adverse effect on your eyesight. Yes, and also if you're not feeling too good with everything, that makes it a bit more difficult. So if you're suffering from any kind of anxiety or depression or anything, then it's an awful lot more difficult to take these words in and to read it because your head's full of all sorts of other things. So if you have poor eyesight, it really is worth your while. You'll get headaches and it's worth your while going to get your eyes checked, and to get eye tests is free, and I think you just have to pay for the frames. Yes, and any other health conditions you have. So I didn't wear glasses before lockdown, and now I do sometimes for reading, only if I'm reading small text. But what makes it a lot easier is to make sure you have got good lighting. Poor lighting is not good, particularly poor lighting in the screen, poor lighting on small text. So if you're going to read, make sure the lighting's sufficient. Okay, so here's a fun fact. Making notes while you're reading is not always effective. It's not always effective. Can anybody put in the chat why it's not particularly effective? Because you always think, you've always been used to, particularly coming from school, you always think you're going to read something, so you'll just make notes at the same time. Yes, apart from doing two things. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, less focus. All these kind of things. It's just a habit. So note taking is, and it's a distraction. Yeah. We've all been, well, I remember at school reading through all the chemistry things, maths things, and German and stuff, taking endless notes while you're reading, because you think you make notes, then you put it down, you read again, but you're not actually committing it to your memory, and you're not focused on it. So it's better to take notes after you've scanned the section of text you want. It's not always effective to use a highlighter for the same reason as in the first one, bearing in mind you can't highlight the screen. So what's a good idea to do? Yeah, if you take a set, you'll be able to understand important bits more. Yes, exactly. So while you're reading a piece of text, assuming that it's the kind of text you want to read and it's answering a question and you're realizing your goal, get the piece of text, whether it be an on-screen piece of text or whether you're using a book, and then read through it quite quickly. Or if there's specific things you want, you pick out the one things you want. So read through it and understand it, or try and get a bit of understanding. Then you should read the text, turn away and make notes of it. So yes, you can read it more than once, but don't read it word for word, or try not to. It depends what you're, because generally some people do read things again, because some people are naturally slower readers. Now I'm a fast reader, but then half the time I'm convinced I don't take it in. So yes, so read it once, let me see, read your page once, and the first time you might not be taking anything at all. Read it again, not word for word, just kind of read it through. Turn it away, you turn away, and then make notes down. So put down a few notes. I'm the same. Yes. Yep. I read really quickly. You don't. Yeah. But then you feel you don't take it all in. It's like watching a TV program and you realise you can't remember what it was. So that is a habit of having a bit of information overload. So try to remember what you've just read. You can talk out loud, and it's sometimes helpful to record this. So if you're not surrounded by somebody else, you could try and actually just read something, turn away, and then try and speak or say what you've just read. And it's amazing how difficult it is at first, and then you can get into the habit. Or record it if you want to record it on your phone, or explain it to a study partner what you have just read. Now, if you're an international student, you may find that easier. You may want to speak out to your flatmates. So what you're basically doing is summarising the text. Now, the bonus of doing this is when you're summarising your text by speaking out loud, that's a very good way of then putting it into your assignment. So if you read something on, I don't know, some environmental aspect of something somewhere, or destruction of seawalls or something, you can read that piece of text, put down a few words, summarize it, and then you can go back and stuff it in your assignment. Easy. So decide how to record the notes. So you need to decide how you're going to record them. You don't have to just make written notes. There's a different way of doing things. There's always an alternative. So you can use a mind map. So mindmeister.com is a mind map that I've used, and it's free. Having said that, it only allows you to make 3 mind maps, so it's dead easy to set up. So if you work in kind of images or diagrams or whatever, rather than just words, that's a good way of doing it. Bullet points. Okay, Mind Genius, very good. I haven't used that one, and I think there's also another one that people use. So it's worth trying to make sure you can get a free one. Sticky notes, whatever else you call them. If anybody, these kind of things. Sticky notes, if you have such a thing. Numerical lists, depending on how you work. Some people like to write numbers, some people need to write letters. Use colours if you want, if you've got to categorise things, or use boxes or circles. So has everybody got any other ways that they record notes? If you have, then stick it in the text. Stick it in the chat. Audio. So Maddie, what do you do with the audio? Do you record it? Type it in. Do you record it? Okay, so you either record it or you listen to a recording. Okay. The next slide. So now, okay. Rewriting what I've learned, just summarised in my own. Yes. Good. Rewriting what I've learned, just all summarised in my own words. And the good thing about learning to summarise is that you'll be able to start. That's when you need a good vocabulary. So summarising means that you're reading what has been written, you're then putting it to your own words, and then the greater your vocabulary is, the more you'll be able to write. Okay, either of myself or, okay, so recording lectures, that's a good idea. So here's the thing. Now, I'm going to write down notability. Notability is the name of an app which you can use on Macs, we can use on Apple. So it's an app, and it's free to download, and that allows you to, when you've got your lecture on your iPad or whatever, then that allows you to write on your iPad. Okay, it's a free app called Notability. So I want you to do something. So can you all see this? Can you all read it? Sorry, it's my phone. Can you all read that? Good. Okay, so just what I've said, I want you to read it. Okay, so I want you to read it, and then we'll go on to the next thing. So just a small exercise, and I will also read it because I haven't read it properly. Right, just take a couple of minutes to read it. Okay, so I'm now going to go on to the next slide. So you should have read that and understood it, or taken it into your head. Okay, So we'll read this, okay, then we'll go back, read it again. So, and then you can take some notes. If you haven't already, take some notes. So you should have made some notes on the sample text. And then we're going to go back to the notes and back to the text to see if anything has been missed. This is where you can listen to the recording. If you've made one, you haven't. Go back and check your questions, erase anything that are not important, and check you have all the answers you need. So had you had a question, you would have gone back. Okay, so I'm going to now go back to the first text. So I want you to write a few notes down or a few words down on what you think are kind of the important words there. So say you were going to be summarising this afterwards. Okay, I'm going to go back to the next slide. So you'll have seen there that reading the text, how many times did you have to read it? Put it in the chat. How many times did you have to read it? Yeah, yes, exactly. So it's strange because you kind of, the first time you read it is probably just to skim through it, just to see it's about seawalls and it's about erosion and it's about negative impacts. So when you, yeah, exactly. So when you read the text the first time, you're just getting the overall idea of it. So you know what it's about. You then need to read it down again. You need to read it for the second time to find out a little bit more in depth of what it's saying and to actually get a full understanding of it. And then to read it the third time or the fourth time, you'll finally get down to the point. So reading isn't easy sometimes. Reading, so we can all read, we can all understand the words, but sometimes you just need to train your brain. So that'll be a good way of doing it. Yes, at least thrice, said Batman. Okay, so, and then when you made a few notes, so if you'd made a few notes, do you think you would be able to speak out, to say, not that I'm going to ask you to do it, but would you be able, I think, to articulate what you've just read, having read it 3 or 4 times? Kind of, yeah. So at least you know, at least you're on the right. So that's one way of doing it. Yeah, that's good, because that just means that, so you just need to practice. You need to practice. You need to practice looking at something, making, and then reading it 2 or 3 times, particularly if it's an important thing for your assignment, assuming you're writing for an assignment or you're doing your dissertation or something. If it's a really important bit, like if it's an abstract. Okay, not really, Joy. You probably have to do it a few more times to get into practice. Now, if you're reading an article, the abstract is one of the most important pieces you can read, because an abstract is really just a summary of the whole article or the whole source. So if you look at the abstract, if that contains rubbish in it that you don't need, then you don't read it. You go and find one that you do read, that you do need, sorry. Okay, so survey, question, read, recall, review. So you're going to survey what you've read. Okay, you're going to survey your article, or survey the source, or survey the website, or the list of web pages that you're gonna read. So put a question in. Okay, so ask yourself a question. So can you type in the chat an example of some of the areas or the topics you will be looking for information on? Put an example in there for some kind of topics you're looking for information on. What your topic areas? Put it in the, put a sample, put an example in the chat. Good grief. Okay. Waste management. Okay, so in your head, building conservation. File allocation computing. Okay, so you will then have a question in your head that you're looking to answer. So survey your article, biomass production. Survey your article. Have the question in your head. Read it 2 or 3 times if it's going to be relevant. Okay, turn your page away. Okay, viable disabilities. Turn your page away. Write notes. Review. Okay, so it may seem a tedious thing to be doing, but that's one of the things you have to. That's one of the ways to get around reading kind of long articles. Okay, so when you are reading, record the full details. Yes, I guessed it was invisible. Read the full details, record the full details of the source so you don't lose it, as you will need it later for references. Okay, so I'm going to put up another poll. Okay, now when you're reading, okay, when you're reading, I'll answer that chat in a second. When you're reading, do you use RefWorks? I'm probably saying RefWorks, you're thinking, what the heck's RefWorks? I'll let you answer that. I will just find it in Google. Okay, 46 of you aren't responding. You're probably either asleep or goodness knows. Anyway, so 6 of you, no, not RefWorks. Oh, most come. 17 no, 11 yes. Okay, so most people don't use, okay. Well, now, I would say from that, taking from that, most people don't use RefWorks. So I put the link, which you'll probably have to sign in yourself because that's signed in with me. RefWorks, yes, exactly. If you don't use it, it'll save you a lot of time. So using RefWorks is like arriving at an early Christmas. So RefWorks is the GCU online referencing system, for those of you who don't know. So if you log into the GCU library, which you should, because if you use the GCU library, you're guaranteed to get the relevant academic sources. You know you don't use Wikipedia, and if you use Google Scholar, you'll probably end up having to pay for it. So if you use RefWorks, so go to the GCU library, sign in. You'll obviously need your GCU login. So go into GCU library, sign in, use the Discover bar to search for your thing, and then you need to sign up to RefWorks. Okay? I won't show you how to do it here. We can probably run a separate session, or the libraries do sessions on using RefWorks. So RefWorks means that when you bring up an article, it creates the reference automatically for you. You can then get that reference and put it in the bottom of your assignment. It can also show you how to cite, how to insert the reference in the text. Okay, so you should go to GCU RefWorks and sign up for RefWorks. And all you need is your GCU login, and then you just create a password, and then it saves all the references and all the articles that you've read throughout your time of doing your assignment or your dissertation. It means you've got a list there, and then it's all in alphabetical order, so it'll be really easy. It's just a really good habit to get into. So the ease of access of web-based material may cause a bias in your reading. So just put it in the chat. I won't do another poll. How many people just use Google for searching something? How many people just use Google? Oh, at least you're being honest. Yeah, most of the time. Google Scholar, good, mostly. Okay, so I'll tell you why Google's okay. Yeah, oh, Google's my first call. So Google is okay for some things. So Google is okay for finding accessible, easy information, like looking for the news or finding out bits and pieces. However, anybody can write and stick anything up onto Google. It's like Wikipedia. Anybody can write in Wikipedia. So the thing about Google is you can everything. Hold on a second, Sebastian. While using RefWorks, are we meant to search assignment projects on the RefWorks page? No, RefWorks is just so when you're, Sebastian, when you're using Discover, you can just use Discover to find your source, to find what you want to, the article. Then you open up the article, and then there's three dots, or there's a symbol, and it'll say RefWorks on it, and you just click RefWorks, and then it'll create the reference for you. But you don't use RefWorks to search for something, you just use the GCU library. When you bring up the article or the resource, then you just click on the top and it says RefWorks, and it takes you straight, and it creates the reference for you. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, so Google, so with Google, you don't know, it's not necessarily academic, you don't know who's written it, you don't know who the audience is, you don't know how old it is. So these are all the things you need to be looking for. You need to look for authority, you need to look for relevance, you need to look for date, you need to look who wrote it, have other people cited it, for example. So on Google, you can find anything. If you use the GCU library, you know that everything is academic work and has been correctly referenced and is a reliable source. So your source should be reliable. So if you're going to be citing the Daily Record or some student blog or something, that's not really reliable data because you don't know who's written it. Plus the Daily Record is biased. Okay, so you should really try and get into the habit as much as possible to use the GCU, yes, here, to use the GCU library. Okay, it's just a habit, so you just get into it, and then you'll get more practiced at putting in the source word. So when you're searching for something, so searching for, yes, Google Scholar is acceptable, absolutely. The only reason it's absolutely acceptable, the only reason why you're better off using the GCU library is because Google Scholar makes you pay for some databases. So if you go into the GCU library, a lot of the articles belong to particular databases and they're really expensive. So for example, Elsevier is a very popular kind of house holding databases. So that's a really popular one, that's really good. And if you go to Google Scholar, you have to pay for it. It's like if you read the Times. Okay, if you read the Times and you go through Google Scholar, you'll have to pay a subscription, whereas everything you go through GCU Library is free. But yeah, Google Scholar is fine. So you just have to be careful what you use, and your lecturer will be able to look at everything and see the quality of your sources. Your quality has got to be really good because what you're reading and what you're writing about is good quality. So you want to support your work with equally good quality. You don't want to drag your work down. Okay, so whatever argument you're making or whatever analysis you're making or description, whatever you're doing, you've got to have another author kind of supporting your information. And that other author has got to be of appropriate standards. So here's another thing. So use the GCU library. Use RefWorks. Here's another thing. I will type it up. I'll put it in the chat. Okay, has everybody got that? Cite them right. CiteThemRightOnline.com. So that is an expert guide. Now GCU has got the license for Cite Them Right. So if you want to use Cite Them Right, then use it. Just type in GCU Library Cite Them Right. It will give you everything you need to know about referencing, which is a workshop we did last week. It'll tell you how to give you referencing tutorials. It will help you to avoid plagiarism. It will help you to summarize your text, give you all the tips for summarizing a text. It will tell you how to understand plagiarism. It will teach you how to paraphrase. So paraphrasing is like getting one sentence in your own words and then incorporating that within your assignment. Okay, so those are the two things. And that's kind of the end of it. So is there, and I'm going to type this in. So you have any more stumbling? So, does anybody have any more stumbling blocks? By stumbling blocks, you obviously know what that means. The last one, Mark, the last one was recorded. So I'll make sure that's posted up. So where did you get the link for this one? Because not worry, it's not really by email. Oh, good. So as I put out an announcement this morning, did you get it this morning? Okay. So Ryan, 3 institutional styles. I can't remember what the choice is. It's Ryan, 3 institutional styles. It says Harvard referencing. Okay, so it's Harvard referencing, and then first up it says it'll maybe ask you, say which one do you want to connect to, and then go to the connect to the most recent version of RefWorks. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you one more thing. Is the LDC, the Learning Development Centre, is it easy to find? Is it easy to track down and locate? Good. Because I just think it's a bit invisible. So we're actually up on the 5th floor, 535, but it's not really well signposted. Yeah, I'm going to ask you something else. If it was on Twitter, would that, if announcements and things links to workshops and stuff went out on Twitter, would that be helpful or not? No, Joy doesn't use Twitter. Don't do Twitter. Because nobody used Twitter. Is that like an old thing? School email is best. Okay. So do you prefer emails? Is there any other kind of social media thing that you would use to get announcements? Okay. Just email. Good. LinkedIn. Oh, that's a point. We could have a LinkedIn page. Too easy to miss things on social media. Yes, okay. So by the sound of that, that probably means that social media is like a different forum, whereby if you're getting an email about something, it's in different contexts. Oh, that's good to know. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. And if I can get all your, I think everybody put their email addresses in, and I will go back and get them all, and I will post up a copy of the PowerPoint, and I will also post up a copy of the recording. Okay, so I've got a workshop next week, and I can't remember what it's on. It's on, I can't remember, but the following ones will be punctuation, the use of punctuation, the use of articles, which is like the and an. Can you send me links for the past weeks too? Didn't? Yes. Okay. I don't know why you didn't know they were running. Maybe the announcements didn't go up. Well, do you know what? There was only about 10 people who came last week. Okay, you didn't get announcements. Oh dear. Okay, do you know what? So last week, I'll tell you what. Okay, 20th of October. Okay, so I tell you what. The last one I did was on referencing and citations. Okay, do you know what? Hi, Craig. I think I might do another one on referencing and citations because only a few people turned up. So if I did another one, I think that'd be really useful. So citations meaning how do you incorporate somebody else's sources in your assignment, and then providing the big list of references at the end, and then how to say according to, and then McDonald blah 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 stated that. So those are referencing citations. Could also post the one done previously in announcements or send them to emails. Okay, yes, I'll do that, and then I'll make sure and put I'll see if the last one has got a recording, and I'll post that up. Okay, but that was really good to know, so I'll know not to use Twitter.